Chapter 37. Sunset. The cabin by the stern windows. Ahab sitting alone and gazing out. I leave a white and turbid wake, pale waters, paler cheeks, where'er I sail. The envious billows sidelong swell to whelm my track, let them. But first I pass, yonder by ever-brimming goblet's rim. The warm waves blush like wine. The gold brow plumbs the blue. The diver sun, slow dived from noon, goes down. My soul mounts up. She wearies with her endless hill. Is then the crown too heavy that I wear? This iron crown of Lombardy. Yet is it bright with many a gem. I the wearer see not its far flashings, but darkly feel that I wear that dazzlingly confounds. 'Tis iron that I know, not gold. 'Tis split, too, that I feel. The jagged edge galls me so. My brain seems to beat against the solid metal. I, steel skull, mine, the sort that needs no helmet in the most brain-battering fight. Dry heat upon my brow. Oh, time was, when as the sunrise nobly spurred me, so the sunset soothed. No more. This lovely light, it lights not me. All loveliness is anguish to me, since I can ne'er enjoy. Gifted with the high perception, I lack the low, enjoying power damned, most subtly and most malignantly, damned in the midst of paradise. Good night, good night. Waving his hand, he moves from the window. 'Twas not so hard a task. I thought to find one stubborn, at the least, but my one cogged circle fits into all their various wheels, and they revolve, or, if you will, like so many anthills of powder, they all stand before me, and I their match. Oh, hard, that to fire others, the match itself must needs be wasting. What I've dared, I've willed, and what I've willed, I'll do. They think me mad, Starbuck does, but I'm demoniac. I am madness maddened. That wild madness that's only calm to comprehend itself. The prophecy was that I should be dismembered, and I lost this leg. I now prophesy that I will dismember my dismemberer. Now then be the prophet and the fulfiller one. That's more than ye great gods, ever were. I laugh and hoot at ye cricket players, ye pugilists, ye deaf Burkes and blinded Bendigos. I will not say as schoolboys do to bullies, take some one of your own size. Don't pommel me. No, ye've knocked me down, and I am up again. But ye have run and hidden. Come forth from behind your cotton bags. I have no long gun to reach ye. Come, Ahab's compliments to ye. Come and see if ye can swerve me. Swerve me. Ye cannot swerve me, else ye swerve yourselves. Man has ye there. Swerve me. The path to my fixed purpose is laid with iron rails, whereon my soul is grooved to run, over unsounded gorges, through the rifled hearts of mountains, under torrents' beds. Unerringly I rush. Naught's an obstacle, naught's an angle to the iron way. Chapter 38. Dusk. By the mainmast, Starbuck leaning against it. My soul is more than matched, she's overmanned, and by a madman. Insufferable sting, that sanity should ground arms on such a field. But he drilled deep down, and blasted all my reason out of me. I think I see his impious end, but feel that I must help him to it. Will I, nil I, the ineffable thing has tied me to him, tows me with a cable I have no knife to cut. Horrible old man, who's over him, he cries. Aye, he would be a Democrat to all above. Look, how he lords it over all below. Oh, I plainly see my miserable office, to obey, rebelling, and worse, yet, to hate with touch of pity. For in his eyes, I read some lurid woe would shrivel me up, had I it. Yet is there hope. Time and tide flow wide. The hated whale has the round, watery world to swim in, as the small goldfish has its glassy globe. His heaven-insulting purpose God may wedge aside. I would up heart, were it not like lead, but my whole clocks run down, my heart the all-controlling weight. I have no key to lift again. A burst of revelry from the forecastle. O God, to sail with such a heathen crew that have small touch of human mothers in them, whelped somewhere by the sharkish sea. The white whale is their demogorgon. Hark, the infernal orgies. That revelry is forward. Mark the unfaltering silence aft. Methinks it pictures life. Foremost through the sparkling sea shoots on the gay, embattled, bantering bow, but only to drag dark Ahab after it, where he broods within his sternward cabin, builded over the dead water of the wake, and further on, hunted by its wolfish gurglings. The long howl thrills me through. Peace, ye revelers, and set the watch. O life, tease in an hour like this, with soul beat down and held to knowledge, as wild, untutored things are forced to feed. O life, tease now that I do feel the latent horror in thee, but tease not me, that horror out of me, and with the soft feeling of the human in me. Yet will I try to fight ye grim, phantom futures. Stand by me, hold me, bind me, O ye blessed influences. Chapter 39. First Night Watch. Foretop, stub solace, and mending a brace. How, 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 hem, clear my throat. I've been thinking over it ever since, and that ha's the final consequence. Why so? Because a laugh's the wisest, easiest answer to all that's queer. And come what will, one comfort's always left. That unfailing comfort is, it's all predestinated. I heard not all is talk with Starbuck, but to my poor eye Starbuck then looked something as I the other evening felt. Be sure the old mogul has fixed him, too. I twigged it, knew it, had had the gift, might readily have prophesied it. For when I clapped my eye upon his skull, I saw it. Well, Stub, why, Stub, that's my title. Well, Stub, what of it, Stub? Here's a carcase. I know not all that may be coming, but be it what it will, I'll go to it laughing. Such a waggish leering as lurks in all your horribles. I feel funny. Fa la Lariscura. What's my juicy little pair at home doing now? Crying its eyes out, giving a party to the last arrived harpooneers, I dare say, gay as a frigate's pennant. And so am I. Fa la Lyra scura. Oh, a brave stave that who calls. Mr. Starbuck. Aye, sir, aside, he's my superior. He has his too, if I'm not mistaken. Aye, sir, just through with this job coming. Chapter 40. Midnight Forecastle. HARPONERS and SAILORS. Foresail rises and discovers the watch standing, lounging, leaning, and lying in various attitudes, all singing in chorus. One St. Nantucket sailor. Oh, boys, don't be sentimental, it's bad for the digestion. Take a tonic, follow me. Sings and all follow. Mate's voice from the quarterdeck. 8 bells there forward. 2 ND, Nantucket sailor. Avast the chorus. 8 bells there. D'ye hear, bellboy? Strike the bell 8, thou Pip, thou blackling, and let me call the watch. I've the sort of mouth, for that, the hogshead mouth. So, thrusts his head down the scuttle. Starboilianus, HOY. 8 bells there below. Tumble up, Dutch sailor. Grand snoozing tonight, matey. Fat night for that. I mark this in our old mogul's wine. It's quite as deadening to some as filliping to others. We sing, they sleep, I lie down there, like ground to your butts. At 'em again. There, take this copper pump, and hail 'em through it. Tell 'em to a vast dreaming of their lasses. Tell 'em it's the resurrection. They must kiss their last, and come to judgment. That's the way, that's it. Thy throat ain't spoiled with eating Amsterdam butter. French sailor. Hist, boys. Let's have a jig or two before we ride to anchor in Blanket Bay. What say ye? There comes the other watch. Stand by all legs. Pip, little Pip. Hurrah with your tambourine. Pip, sulky and sleepy. Don't know where it is. French sailor. Beat thy belly then, and wag thy ears. Jig it, men. I say Mary's the word, hurrah. Damn me, won't you dance? Form now Indian file, and gallop into the double shuffle. Throw yourselves. Legs, legs. Iceland sailor. I don't like your floor, matey. It's too springy to my taste. I'm used to ice floors. I'm sorry to throw cold water on the subject, but excuse me. Maltese sailor. Me too, where's your girls? Who but a fool would take his left hand by his right and say to himself, how d'ye do? Partners. I must have partners. Sicilian sailor. I girls and a green. Then I'll hop with ye, yea, turn grasshopper. Long Island sailor. Well, ye sulkies, there's plenty more of us. Hoe corn when you may. Say I all legs go to harvest soon. Here comes the music, now for it. AZORE sailor. Ascending and pitching the tambourine up the scuttle. Here you are, Pip, and there's the windlass bits up you mount. Now, boys, the half of them dance to the tambourine. Some go below, some sleep or lie among the coils of rigging. Oaths aplenty. AZORE sailor. Dancing, go it, Pip. Bang it, bellboy. Rig it, dig it, stig it, quig it, bellboy. Make fireflies, break the jinglers. Pip, jinglers, you say. There goes another, dropped off, I pound it so. China sailor. Rattle thy teeth then, and pound away, make a pagoda of thyself. French sailor, merry mad, hold up thy hoop, Pip, till I jump through it. Split jibs, tear yourselves, TASHTGO. Quietly smoking, that's a white man, he calls that fun. Humph, I save my sweat. Old Manx sailor, I wonder whether those jolly lads bethink them of what they are dancing over. I'll dance over your grave. I will. That's the bitterest threat of your night women, that beat headwinds round corners. O Christ, to think of the green navies and the green-skulled crews. Well, well, belike the whole world's a ball, as you scholars have it. And so, 'tis right to make one ballroom of it. Dance on, lads, you're young, I was once. 3D, Nantucket sailor. Spell O, phew. This is worse than pulling after whales in a calm. Give us a whiff, Tash. They cease dancing and gather in clusters. Meantime the sky darkens, the wind rises. Lasker sailor, by Brahma, boys, it'll be douse sail soon. The skyborn, high-tide Ganges turned to wind. Thou showest thy black brow, Siva. Maltese sailor, reclining and shaking his cap. It's the waves. The snow's caps turn to jigget now. They'll shake their tassels soon. Now would all the waves were women. Then I'd go drown, and chassis with them evermore. There's naught so sweet on earth, heaven may not match it, as those swift glances of warm, wild bosoms in the dance, when the overarboring arms hide such ripe, bursting grapes. Sicilian sailor, reclining, tell me not of it. Hark ye, lad, fleet interlacings of the limbs, lithe swayings, coyings, flutterings. Lip, heart, hip, all graze, unceasing touch and go. Not taste, observe ye, else come satiety. A pagan, nudging, TAHITAN sailor, reclining on a mat. Hail, holy nakedness of our dancing girls, the heava-heava. Low-veiled, high-palmed Tahiti, I still rest me on thy mat, but the soft soil has slid. I saw thee woven in the wood, my mat, green the first day I brought ye thence, now worn and wilted quite. Ah me, not thou nor I can bear the change. How then, if so be transplanted to yon sky? Hear I the roaring streams from Pirohides' peak of spears, when they leap down the crags and drown the villages. The blast, up spine and meet it, leaps to his feet. Portuguese sailor, how the sea rolls swashing gainst the side. Stand by for reefing, hearties. The winds are just crossing swords. Pell-mell they'll go lunging presently. Danish sailor, crack, crack, old ship. So long as thou crackest, thou holdest. Well done. The mate, there holds he to it stiffly. He's no more afraid than the Isle fort at Kattegat, put there to fight the Baltic with storm-lashed guns, on which the sea salt cakes. For Th, Nantucket sailor, he has his orders, mind ye that. I heard old Ahab tell him he must always kill a squall, something as they burst a waterspout with a pistol. Fire your ship right into it. English sailor, blood, but that old man's a grand old cove. We are the lads to hunt him up his whale. I'll, I, old Manx sailor, how the 3 pines shake. Pines are the hardest sort of tree to live when shifted to any other soil. And here there's none but the crew's cursed clay. Steady, helmsman, steady. This is the sort of weather when brave hearts snap ashore, and keeled hulls split at sea. Our captain has his birthmark. Look yonder, boys. There's another in the sky, lurid like, ye see. All else pitch black. Dhgoo. What of that? Who's afraid of blacks, afraid of me? I'm quarried out of it. Spanish sailor. Aside. He wants to bully. Ah, the old grudge makes me touchy. Advancing. I harpooneer. Thy race is the undeniable dark side of mankind. Devilish dark at that. No offense. Dhgoo grimly. None. SD. JAGO sailor. That Spaniard's mad or drunk. But that can't be. Or else, in his one case, our old mogul's firewaters are somewhat long in working. 5th, Nantucket sailor. What's that I saw lightning? Yes. Spanish sailor. No, Dagu showing his teeth. Dhgoo springing. Swallow thine, mannequin. White skin, white liver. Spanish sailor, meeting him. Knife thee heartily. Big frame, small spirit. All. A row. A row. A row. TASHTGO with a whiff. A row alow. And a row aloft, gods and men both brawlers. Humphy. Belfast sailor. A row. Errata row. The Virgin be blessed. A row. Plunge in with ye. English sailor. Fair play. Snatch the Spaniard's knife. A ring, a ring. Old Manx sailor. Ready formed. There, the ringed horizon. In that ring Cain struck Abel. Sweet work, right work. No. Why then, God, mad'st thou the ring? Mate's voice from the quarterdeck. Hands by the halyards. In topgallant sails. Stand by to reef topsails. All. The squall. The squall. Jump, my jollies. They scatter. Pip shrinking under the windlass. Jollies. Lord help such jollies. Crish crash. There goes the jibstay. Blang wang. God. Duck lower. Pip, here comes the royal yard. It's worse than being in the world woods. The last day of the year. Who'd go climbing after chestnuts now? But there they go, all cursing, and here I don't. Fine prospects to 'em. They're on the road to heaven. Hold on hard. Jiminy, what a squall. But those chaps there are worse, yet. They are your white squalls, they. White squalls. White whales, sure. Sure. Here have I heard all their chat just now. And the white whales, sure. Sure, but spoken of once. And only this evening. It makes me jingle all over like my tambourine. That anaconda of an old man swore 'em in to hunt him. Oh, thou big white god aloft there somewhere in yon darkness, have mercy on this small black boy down here. Preserve him from all men that have no bowels to feel fear. Chapter 41. Moby Dick. Ishmael, was one of that crew. My shouts had gone up with the rest, my oath had been welded with theirs. And stronger I shouted, and more did I hammer and clinch my oath, because of the dread in my soul. A wild, mystical, sympathetical feeling was in me. Ahab's quenchless feud seemed mine. With greedy ears, I learned the history of that murderous monster, against whom I and all the others had taken our oaths of violence and revenge. For some time past, though at intervals only, the unaccompanied, secluded white whale had haunted those uncivilized seas mostly frequented by the sperm whale fishermen. But not all of them knew of his existence. Only a few of them, comparatively, had knowingly seen him, while the number who as yet had actually and knowingly given battle to him was small indeed. For, owing to the large number of whale cruisers, the disorderly way they were sprinkled over the entire watery circumference, many of them adventurously pushing their quest along solitary latitudes, so as seldom or never for a whole 12-month or more on a stretch to encounter a single news-telling sail of any sort. The inordinate length of each separate voyage, the irregularity of the times of sailing from home, all these, with other circumstances, direct and indirect, long obstructed the spread through the whole worldwide whaling fleet of the special individualizing tidings concerning Moby Dick. It was hardly to be doubted that several vessels reported to have encountered, at such or such a time, or on such or such a meridian, a sperm whale of uncommon magnitude and malignity, which whale, after doing great mischief to his assailants, had completely escaped them. To some minds, it was not an unfair presumption, I say, that the whale in question must have been no other than Moby Dick. Yet as of late the sperm whale fishery had been marked by various and not unfrequent instances of great ferocity, cunning, and malice in the monster attacked. Therefore it was that those who by accident ignorantly gave battle to Moby Dick, such hunters perhaps, for the most part, were content to ascribe the peculiar terror he bred, more, as it were, to the perils of the sperm whale fishery at large than to the individual cause. In that way, mostly, the disastrous encounter between Ahab and the whale had hitherto been popularly regarded. And as for those who, previously hearing of the white whale, by chance caught sight of him, in the beginning of the thing, they had every one of them, almost, as boldly and fearlessly lowered for him as for any other whale of that species. But at length, such calamities did ensue in these assaults, not restricted to sprained wrists and ankles, broken limbs, or devouring amputations, but fatal to the last degree of fatality, those repeated disastrous repulses, all accumulating and piling their terrors upon Moby Dick. Those things had gone far to shake the fortitude of many brave hunters, to whom the story of the white whale had eventually come. Nor did wild rumors of all sorts fail to exaggerate, and still the more horrify, the true histories of these deadly encounters. For not only do fabulous rumors naturally grow out of the very body of all surprising terrible events, as the smitten tree gives birth to its fungi. But in maritime life, far more than in that of terra firma, wild rumors abound, wherever there is any adequate reality for them to cling to. And as the sea surpasses the land in this matter, so the whale fishery surpasses every other sort of maritime life in the wonderfulness and fearfulness of the rumors which sometimes circulate there. For not only are whalemen as a body unexempt from that ignorance and superstitiousness hereditary to all sailors, but of all sailors, they are by all odds the most directly brought into contact with whatever is appallingly astonishing in the sea. Face to face, they not only eye its greatest marvels, but hand to jaw give battle to them, alone in such remotest waters that though you sailed 1,000 miles and passed 1,000 shores, you would not come to any chiseled hearthstone or aught hospitable beneath that part of the sun. In such latitudes and longitudes, pursuing to such a calling as he does, the whaleman is wrapped by influences all tending to make his fancy pregnant with many a mighty birth. No wonder, then, that ever-gathering volume from the mere transit over the widest watery spaces, the outblown rumors of the white whale did, in the end, incorporate with themselves all manner of morbid hints and half-formed fetal suggestions of supernatural agencies, which eventually invested Moby Dick with new terrors unborrowed from anything that visibly appears, so that in many cases such a panic did he finally strike, that few who by those rumors, at least, had heard of the white whale, few of those hunters were willing to encounter the perils of his jaw. But there were still other and more vital practical influences at work. Not even at the present day has the original prestige of the sperm whale, as fearfully distinguished from all other species of the leviathan, died out of the minds of the whalemen as a body. There are those this day among them who, though intelligent and courageous enough in offering battle to the Greenland or right whale, would perhaps, either from professional inexperience or incompetency or timidity, decline a contest with the sperm whale. At any rate, there are plenty of whalemen, especially among those whaling nations not sailing under the American flag, who have never hostilely encountered the sperm whale, but whose sole knowledge of the leviathan is restricted to the ignoble monster primitively pursued in the north. Seated on their hatches, these men will hearken with a childish fireside interest and awe to the wild, strange tales of southern whaling. Nor is the preeminent tremendousness of the great sperm whale anywhere more feelingly comprehended than on board of those prows which stem him, and as if the now tested reality of his might had in former legendary times thrown its shadow before it. We find some book naturalists, Olason and Povelson, declaring the sperm well not only to be a consternation to every other creature in the sea, but also to be so incredibly ferocious as continually to be athirst for human blood, nor even down to so late a time as Cuvier's, or these, or almost similar impressions effaced. For in his natural history, the Baron himself affirms that at sight of the sperm whale, all fish, sharks included, are struck with the most lively terrors, and often in the precipitancy of their flight dash themselves against the rocks with such violence as to cause instantaneous death. And however the general experiences in the fishery may amend such reports as these, yet in their full terribleness, even to the bloodthirsty item of Povelson, the superstitious belief in them is, in some vicissitudes of their vocation, revived in the minds of the hunters, so that overawed by the rumors and portents concerning him, not a few of the fishermen recalled, in reference to Moby Dick, the earlier days of the sperm whale fishery, when it was oftentimes hard to induce long-practiced right whalemen to embark in the perils of this new and daring warfare, such men protesting that, although other leviathans might be hopefully pursued, yet to chase and point lance at such an apparition as the sperm whale was not for mortal man, that to attempt it would be inevitably to be torn into a quick eternity. On this head, there are some remarkable documents that may be consulted. Nevertheless, some there were, who even in the face of these things were ready to give chase to Moby Dick, and a still greater number who, chancing only to hear of him distantly and vaguely, without the specific details of any certain calamity, and without superstitious accompaniments, were sufficiently hardy not to flee from the battle, if offered. One of the wild suggestions referred to, as at last coming to be linked with the white whale in the minds of the superstitiously inclined, was the unearthly conceit that Moby Dick was ubiquitous, that he had actually been encountered in opposite latitudes at one and the same instant of time. Nor, credulous as such minds must have been, was this conceit altogether without some faint show of superstitious probability. For as the secrets of the currents in the seas have never yet been divulged, even to the most erudite research, so the hidden ways of the sperm whale when beneath the surface remain, in great part, unaccountable to his pursuers, and from time to time have originated the most curious and contradictory speculations regarding them, especially concerning the mystic modes, whereby, after sounding to a great depth, he transports himself with such vast swiftness to the most widely distant points. It is a thing well known to both American and English whale ships, and as well a thing placed upon authoritative record years ago by Scoresby, that some whales have been captured far north in the Pacific, in whose bodies have been found the barbs of harpoons darted in the Greenland seas. Nor is it to be gainsaid that in some of these instances it has been declared that the interval of time between the two assaults could not have exceeded very many days. Hence, by inference, it has been believed by some whalemen that the Nor-West Passage, so long a problem to man, was never a problem to the whale, so that here, in the real living experience of living men, the prodigies related in old times of the inland Strelo Mountain in Portugal, near whose top there was said to be a lake in which the wrecks of ships floated up to the surface. And that still more wonderful story of the Arethusa fountain near Syracuse, whose waters were believed to have come from the Holy Land by an underground passage. These fabulous narrations are almost fully equaled by the realities of the whalemen. Forced into familiarity, then, with such prodigies as these, and knowing that after repeated, intrepid assaults, the white whale had escaped alive, it cannot be much matter of surprise that some whalemen should go still further in their superstitions, declaring Moby Dick not only ubiquitous, but immortal, for immortality is but ubiquity in time, that though groves of spears should be planted in his flanks, he would still swim away unharmed, or if indeed he should ever be made to spout thick blood, such a sight would be but a ghastly deception. For again, in unensanguined billows hundreds of leagues away, his unsullied jet would once more be seen. But even stripped of these supernatural surmisings, there was enough in the earthly make and incontestable character of the monster to strike the imagination with unwonted power. For it was not so much his uncommon bulk that so much distinguished him from other sperm whales, but, as was elsewhere thrown out, a peculiar snow-white wrinkled forehead, and a high, pyramidical white hump. These were his prominent features, the tokens whereby, even in the limitless, uncharted seas, he revealed his identity at a long distance to those who knew him. The rest of his body was so streaked and spotted and marbled with the same shrouded hue that, in the end, he had gained his distinctive appellation of the white whale, a name, indeed, literally justified by his vivid aspect when seen gliding at high noon through a dark blue sea, leaving a Milky Way wake of creamy foam, all spangled with golden gleamings. Nor was it his unwonted magnitude, nor his remarkable hue, nor yet his deformed lower jaw, that so much invested the whale with natural terror as that unexampled, intelligent malignity, which, according to specific accounts, he had over and over again evinced in his assaults. More than all, his treacherous retreats struck more of dismay than perhaps aught else, for when swimming before his exulting pursuers, with every apparent symptom of alarm, he had several times been known to turn round suddenly, and, bearing down upon them, either stave their boats to splinters, or drive them back in consternation to their ship. Already several fatalities had attended his chase, but those similar disasters, however little bruited ashore, were by no means unusual in the fishery. Yet, in most instances, such seemed the white whale's infernal aforethought of ferocity, that every dismembering or death that he caused was not wholly regarded as having been inflicted by an unintelligent agent. Judge, then, to what pitches of inflamed, distracted fury the minds of his more desperate hunters were impelled, when amid the chips of chewed boats and the sinking limbs of torn comrades, they swam out of the white curds of the whale's direful wrath into the serene, exasperating sunlight that smiled on, as if at a birth or a bridal. His 3 boats stove around him, and oars and men both whirling in the eddies. One captain, seizing the line knife from his broken prow, had dashed at the whale as an Arkansas duelist at his foe, blindly seeking with a 6-inch blade to reach the fathom-deep life of the whale. That captain was Ahab, and then it was that suddenly sweeping his sickle-shaped lower jaw beneath him, Moby Dick had reaped away Ahab's leg, as a mower a blade of grass in the field. No turbaned Turk, no hired Venetian or Malay could have smote him with more seeming malice. Small reason was there to doubt, then, that ever since that almost fatal encounter, Ahab had cherished a wild vindictiveness against the whale. All the more fell for that, in his frantic morbidness, he at last came to identify with him. Not only all his bodily woes, but all his intellectual and spiritual exasperations. The white whale swam before him as the monomaniac incarnation of all those malicious agencies which some deep men feel eating in them, till they are left living on with half a heart and half a lung. That intangible malignity which has been from the beginning, to whose dominion even the modern Christians ascribe 1/2 of the world's, which the ancient Ophites of the East reverenced in their statue devil. Ahab did not fall down and worship it like them, but deliriously transferring its idea to the abhorred white whale, he pitted himself, all mutilated, against it. All that most maddens and torments, all that stirs up the lees of things, all truth with malice in it, all that cracks the sinews and cakes the brain, all the subtle demonisms of life and thought, all evil to crazy Ahab were visibly personified and made practically assailable in Moby Dick. He piled upon the whale's white hump the sum of all the general rage and hate felt by his whole race from Adam down. And then, as if his chest had been a mortar, he burst his hot heart's shell upon it. It is not probable that this monomania in him took its instant rise at the precise time of his bodily dismemberment. Then, in darting at the monster, knife in hand, he had but given loose to a sudden, passionate, corporal animosity. And when he received the stroke that tore him, he probably but felt the agonizing bodily laceration, but nothing more. Yet, when by this collision forced to turn towards home, and for long months of days and weeks, Ahab and Anguish lay stretched together in one hammock, rounding in mid-winter that dreary, howling Patagonian cape. Then it was that his torn body and gashed soul bled into one another, and so interfusing made him mad, that it was only then, on the homeward voyage after the encounter, that the final monomania seized him. Seems all but certain from the fact that, at intervals during the passage, he was a raving lunatic, and though unlimbed of a leg, yet such vital strength yet lurked in his Egyptian chest, and was moreover intensified by his delirium, that his mates were forced to lace him fast, even there, as he sailed, raving in his hammock. In a straitjacket, he swung to the mad rockings of the gales, and when running into more sufferable latitudes, the ship with mild stunsails spread, floated across the tranquil tropics. And to all appearances, the old man's delirium seemed left behind him with the Cape Horn swells, and he came forth from his dark den into the blessed light and air. Even then, when he bore that firm, collected front, however pale, and issued his calm orders once again, and his mates thanked God the direful madness was now gone. Even then, Ahab in his hidden self raved on. Human madness is oftentimes a cunning and most feline thing. When you think it fled, it may have but become transfigured into some still, subtler form. Ahab's full lunacy subsided not, but deepeningly contracted, like the unabated Hudson, when that noble Northman flows narrowly, but unfathomably through the Highland gorge. But as in his narrow-flowing monomania, not one jot of Ahab's broad madness had been left behind. So, in that broad madness, not one jot of his great natural intellect had perished. That before living agent now became the living instrument, if such a furious trope may stand. His special lunacy stormed his general sanity, and carried it, and turned all its consented cannon upon its own mad mark, so that far from having lost his strength, Ahab, to that one end, did now possess 1,000-fold more potency than ever he had sanely brought to bear upon any one reasonable object. This is much, yet Ahab's larger, darker, deeper part remains unhinted, but vain to popularize profundities, and all truth is profound, winding far down from within the very heart of this spiked hotel de Cluny, where we here stand, however grand and wonderful. Now quit it, and take your way, ye nobler, sadder souls, to those vast Roman halls of Thermes, where far beneath the fantastic towers of man's upper earth, his root of grandeur, his whole awful essence sits in bearded state, an antique buried beneath antiquities, and throned on torsos. So with a broken throne, the great gods mock that captive king. So like a caryatid, he patient sits, upholding on his frozen brow the piled entablatures of ages. Wind ye down there, ye prouder, sadder souls. Question that proud, sad king. A family likeness. Aye, he did beget ye, ye young exiled royalties. And from your grim sire only will the old state secret come. Now in his heart, Ahab had some glimpse of this, namely, all my means are sane, my motive and my object mad, yet without power to kill, or change, or shun the fact. He likewise knew that to mankind he did long dissemble in some sort, did still, but that thing of his dissembling was only subject to his perceptibility, not to his will determinate. Nevertheless, so well did he succeed in that dissembling, that when with ivory leg he stepped ashore at last, no Nantucketer thought him otherwise than but naturally grieved, and that to the quick, with the terrible casualty which had overtaken him. The report of his undeniable delirium at sea was likewise popularly ascribed to a kindred cause, and so too all the added moodiness which always afterwards, to the very day of sailing in the Pequod on the present voyage, sat brooding on his brow. Nor is it so very unlikely that, far from distrusting his fitness for another whaling voyage, on account of such dark symptoms, the calculating people of that prudent isle were inclined to harbor the conceit that for those very reasons he was all the better qualified and set on edge for a pursuit so full of rage and wildness as the bloody hunt of whales, gnawed within and scorched without with the infixed, unrelenting fangs of some incurable idea. Such an one, could he be found, would seem the very man to dart his iron and lift his lance against the most appalling of all brutes, or if for any reason thought to be corporeally incapacitated for that, yet such an one would seem superlatively competent to cheer and howl on his underlings to the attack. But be all this as it may, certain it is that with the mad secret of his unabated rage bolted up and keyed in him, Ahab had purposely sailed upon the present voyage with the one only and all-engrossing object of hunting the white whale. Had any one of his old acquaintances on shore but half dreamed of what was lurking in him then, how soon would their aghast and righteous souls have wrenched the ship from such a fiendish man. They were bent on profitable cruises, the profit to be counted down in dollars from the mint. He was intent on an audacious, immitigable, and supernatural revenge. Here, then, was this gray-headed, ungodly old man, chasing with curses a job's whale round the world, at the head of a crew, too, chiefly made up of mongrel renegades, and castaways, and cannibals, morally enfeebled also by the incompetence of mere, unaided virtue or right-mindedness in Starbuck, the invulnerable jollity of indifference and recklessness in Stubb, and the pervading mediocrity in Flask. Such a crew, so officered, seemed specially picked and packed by some infernal fatality to help him to his monomaniac revenge. How it was that they so aboundingly responded to the old man's ire, by what evil magic their souls were possessed, that at times his hate seemed almost theirs, the white whale as much their insufferable foe as his. How all this came to be what the white whale was to them, or how to their unconscious understandings, also, in some dim, unsuspected way, he might have seemed the gliding great demon of the seas of life. All this to explain would be to dive deeper than Ishmael can go, the subterranean miner that works in us all. How can one tell whither leads his shaft by the ever-shifting, muffled sound of his pick, who does not feel the irresistible arm drag? What skiff in tow of a 74 can stand still? For one, I gave myself up to the abandonment of the time and the place, but while yet all a rush to encounter the whale, could see naught in that brute but the deadliest ill. Chapter 42. The whiteness of the whale. What the white whale was to Ahab has been hinted. What, at times, he was to me, as yet remains unsaid, aside from those more obvious considerations touching Moby Dick, which could not but occasionally awaken in any man's soul some alarm. There was another thought, or rather vague, nameless horror concerning him, which at times by its intensity completely overpowered all the rest, and yet so mystical and well nigh ineffable was it, that I almost despair of putting it in a comprehensible form. It was the whiteness of the whale that above all things appalled me. But how can I hope to explain myself here? And yet, in some dim, random way, explain myself I must, else all these chapters might be naught, though in many natural objects, whiteness refiningly enhances beauty, as if imparting some special virtue of its own, as in marbles, japonicas, and pearls. And though various nations have in some way recognized a certain royal preeminence in this hue, even the barbaric, grand old kings of Pegu, placing the title Lord of the White Elephants above all their other magniloquent ascriptions of dominion, and the modern kings of Siam unfurling the same snow-white quadruped in the royal standard, and the Hanoverian flag bearing the one figure of a snow-white charger, and the great Austrian Empire, Caesarian, heir to overlording Rome, having for the imperial color the same imperial hue. And though this preeminence in it applies to the human race itself, giving the white man ideal mastership over every dusky tribe, and though, besides all this, whiteness has been even made significant of gladness, for among the Romans a white stone marked a joyful day, and though in other mortal sympathies and symbolizings, this same hue is made the emblem of many touching, noble things, the innocence of brides, the benignity of age, though among the red men of America, the giving of the white belt of wampum was the deepest pledge of honor, though in many climes, whiteness typifies the majesty of justice in the ermine of the judge, and contributes to the daily state of kings and queens drawn by milk-white steeds, though even in the higher mysteries of the most august religions, it has been made the symbol of the divine spotlessness and power. By the Persian fire worshippers, the white forked flame being held the holiest on the altar end in the Greek mythologies, great Jove himself being made incarnate in a snow-white bull, and though to the noble Iroquois, the midwinter sacrifice of the sacred white dog was by far the holiest festival of their theology, that spotless, faithful creature being held the purest envoy they could send to the Great Spirit with the annual tidings of their own fidelity. And though directly from the Latin word for white, all Christian priests derive the name of one part of their sacred vesture, the alb, or tunic, worn beneath the cassock. And though among the holy pomps of the Romish faith, white is specially employed in the celebration of the Passion of our Lord, though in the vision of St. John, white robes are given to the redeemed, and the 24 elders stand clothed in white before the great white throne, and the Holy One that sitteth there white like wool, yet for all these accumulated associations with whatever is sweet and honorable and sublime, there yet lurks an elusive something in the innermost idea of this hue, which strikes more of panic to the soul than that redness which affrights in blood. This elusive quality it is which causes the thought of whiteness, when divorced from more kindly associations, and coupled with any object terrible in itself, to heighten that terror to the furthest bounds. Witness the white bear of the poles and the white shark of the tropics. What but their smooth, flaky whiteness makes them the transcendent horrors they are? That ghastly whiteness it is which imparts such an abhorrent mildness, even more loathsome than terrific, to the dumb gloating of their aspect, so that not the fierce-fanged tiger in his heraldic coat can so stagger courage as the white-shrouded bear or shark. With reference to the polar bear, it may possibly be urged by him who would fain go still deeper into this matter, that it is not the whiteness, separately regarded, which heightens the intolerable hideousness of that brute. For analyzed, that heightened hideousness, it might be said, only rises from the circumstance that the irresponsible ferociousness of the creature stands invested in the fleece of celestial innocence and love, and hence, by bringing together two such opposite emotions in our minds, the polar bear frightens us with so unnatural a contrast. But even assuming all this to be true, yet, were it not for the whiteness, you would not have that intensified terror. As for the white shark, the white gliding ghostliness of repose in that creature, when beheld in his ordinary moods, strangely tallies with the same quality in the polar quadruped. This peculiarity is most vividly hit by the French in the name they bestow upon that fish. The Romish Mass for the dead begins with Requiem Aeternam, eternal rest, whence Requiem denominating the Mass itself and any other funeral music. Now, in allusion to the white, silent stillness of death in this shark, and the mild deadliness of his habits, the French call him Requin. Bethink thee of the albatross, whence come those clouds of spiritual wonderment and pale dread, in which that white phantom sails in all imaginations. Not Coleridge first threw that spell, but God's great, unflattering laureate, nature. I remember the first albatross I ever saw. It was during a prolonged gale, in waters hard upon the Antarctic seas. From my forenoon watch below, I ascended to the overclouded deck, and there, dashed upon the main hatches, I saw a regal, feathery thing of unspotted whiteness, and with a hooked Roman bill sublime. At intervals, it arched forth its vast archangel wings, as if to embrace some holy ark. Wondrous flutterings and throbbings shook it, though bodily unharmed. It uttered cries, as some king's ghost in supernatural distress. Through its inexpressible, strange eyes, methought I peeped to secrets which took hold of God. As Abraham before the angels, I bowed myself. The white thing was so white, its wings so wide, and in those forever exiled waters, I had lost the miserable warping memories of traditions and of towns. Long I gazed at that prodigy of plumage. I cannot tell, can only hint, the things that darted through me then. But at last I awoke, and turning, asked a sailor what bird was this. A Gawney, he replied. Gawney, never had heard that name before. Is it conceivable that this glorious thing is utterly unknown to men ashore? Never, but some time after, I learned that Gani was some seaman's name for albatross, so that by no possibility could Coleridge's wild rhyme have had aught to do with those mystical impressions which were mine when I saw that bird upon our deck, for neither had I then read the rhyme, nor knew the bird to be an albatross. Yet in saying this, I do but indirectly burnish a little brighter the noble merit of the poem and the poet. I assert, then, that in the wondrous bodily whiteness of the bird chiefly lurks the secret of the spell. A truth the more evinced in this, that by a solcism of terms there are birds called grey albatrosses, and these I have frequently seen, but never with such emotions as when I beheld the Antarctic fowl. But how had the mystic thing been caught? Whisper it not, and I will tell with a treacherous hook and line. As the fowl floated on the sea, at last the captain made a postman of it, tying a lettered leathern tally round its neck, with the ship's time and place, and then letting it escape. But I doubt not that leathern tally meant for man was taken off in heaven when the white fowl flew to join the wing-folding, the invoking and adoring cherubim. Most famous in our Western annals and Indian traditions is that of the white steed of the prairies, a magnificent milk-white charger, large-eyed, small-headed, bluff-chested, and with the dignity of 1,000 monarchs in his lofty, over-scorning carriage. He was the elected Xerxes of vast herds of wild horses, whose pastures in those days were only fenced by the Rocky Mountains and the Alleghanies. At their flaming head, he westward trooped it like that chosen star, which every evening leads on the hosts of light. The flashing cascade of his mane, the curving comet of his tail, invested him with housings more resplendent than gold and silver beaters could have furnished him, a most imperial and archangelical apparition of that unfallen Western world, which to the eyes of the old trappers and hunters revived the glories of those primeval times when Adam walked majestic as a god, bluff-browed and fearless as this mighty steed, whether marching amid his aides and marshals in the van of countless cohorts that endlessly streamed it over the plains like an Ohio, or whether with his circumambient subjects browsing all around at the horizon, the white steed gallopingly reviewed them with warm nostrils reddening through his cool milkiness. In whatever aspect he presented himself, always to the bravest Indians, he was the object of trembling reverence and awe. Nor can it be questioned from what stands on legendary record of this noble horse, that it was his spiritual whiteness chiefly, which so clothed him with divineness, and that this divineness had that in it which, though commanding worship, at the same time enforced a certain nameless terror. But there are other instances where this whiteness loses all that accessory and strange glory which invests it in the white steed and albatross. What is it that in the albino man so peculiarly repels and often shocks the eye, as that sometimes he is loathed by his own kith and kin? It is that whiteness which invests him, a thing expressed by the name he bears. The albino is as well made as other men, has no substantive deformity, and yet this mere aspect of all-pervading whiteness makes him more strangely hideous than the ugliest abortion. Why should this be so? Nor, in quite other aspects, does nature, in her least palpable, but not the less malicious agencies, fail to enlist among her forces this crowning attribute of the terrible. From its snowy aspect, the gauntleted ghost of the southern seas has been denominated the white squall. Nor, in some historic instances, has the art of human malice omitted so potent an auxiliary. How wildly it heightens the effect of that passage in Froissart, when, masked in the snowy symbol of their faction, the desperate White Hoods of Ghent murder their bailiff in the marketplace. Nor, in some things, does the common, hereditary experience of all mankind fail to bear witness to the supernaturalism of this hue. It cannot well be doubted that the one visible quality in the aspect of the dead which most appalls the gazer is the marble pallor lingering there, as if indeed that pallor were as much like the badge of consternation in the other world as of mortal trepidation here. And from that pallor of the dead we borrow the expressive hue of the shroud in which we wrap them. Nor even in our superstitions do we fail to throw the same snowy mantle round our phantoms, all ghosts rising in a milk-white fog, yea, while these terrors seize us. Let us add that even the King of Terrors, when personified by the evangelist, rides on his pallid horse. Therefore, in his other moods, symbolize whatever grand or gracious thing he will by whiteness. No man can deny that in its profoundest idealized significance, it calls up a peculiar apparition to the soul. But though without dissent this point be fixed, how is mortal man to account for it? To analyze it would seem impossible. Can we then, by the citation of some of those instances wherein this thing of whiteness, though for the time either wholly or in great part stripped of all direct associations, calculated to impart to it aught fearful, but nevertheless is found to exert over us the same sorcery, however modified, can we thus hope to light upon some chance clue to conduct us to the hidden cause we seek? Let us try, but in a matter like this, subtlety appeals to subtlety, and without imagination, no man can follow another into these halls. And though, doubtless, some at least of the imaginative impressions about to be presented may have been shared by most men, yet few perhaps were entirely conscious of them at the time, and therefore may not be able to recall them now. Why, to the man of untutored ideality, who happens to be but loosely acquainted with the peculiar character of the day, does the bare mention of Whitsuntide marshal in the fancy such long, dreary, speechless processions of slow-pacing pilgrims, downcast and hooded with new-fallen snow, or to the unread, unsophisticated Protestant of the middle American states? Why does the passing mention of a white friar or a white nun evoke such an eyeless statue in the soul? Or what is there apart from the traditions of dungeoned warriors and kings, which will not wholly account for it, that makes the White Tower of London tell so much more strongly on the imagination of an untraveled American than those other storied structures, its neighbors, the Byward Tower, or even the Bloody, and those sublimer towers, the White Mountains of New Hampshire, whence, in peculiar moods, comes that gigantic ghostliness over the soul at the bare mention of that name, while the thought of Virginia's Blue Ridge is full of a soft, dewy, distant dreaminess. Or why, irrespective of all latitudes and longitudes, does the name of the White Sea exert such a spectralness over the fancy, while that of the Yellow Sea lulls us with mortal thoughts of long lacquered mild afternoons on the waves, followed by the gaudiest and yet sleepiest of sunsets, or, to choose a wholly unsubstantial instance, purely addressed to the fancy, why, in reading the old fairy tales of Central Europe, does the tall, pale man of the Hartz forests, whose changeless pallor unrustlingly glides through the green of the groves, why is this phantom more terrible than all the whooping imps of the Blocksberg? Nor is it, altogether, the remembrance of her cathedral toppling earthquakes, nor the stampedos of her frantic seas, nor the tearlessness of arid skies that never rain, nor the sight of her wide field of leaning spires, wrenched copestones, and crosses, all a-droop, like canted yards of anchored fleets, and her suburban avenues of house walls lying over upon each other as a tossed pack of cards. It is not these things alone which make tearless Lima the strangest, saddest city thou canst see. For Lima has taken the white veil, and there is a higher horror in this whiteness of her woe. Old as Pizarro, this whiteness keeps her ruins forever new, admits not the cheerful greenness of complete decay, spreads over her broken ramparts the rigid pallor of an apoplexy that fixes its own distortions. I know that, to the common apprehension, this phenomenon of whiteness is not confessed to be the prime agent in exaggerating the terror of objects otherwise terrible. Nor to the unimaginative mind is there aught of terror in those appearances, whose awfulness to another mind almost solely consists in this one phenomenon, especially when exhibited under any form at all approaching to muteness or universality. What I mean by these two statements may perhaps be respectively elucidated by the following examples. First, the mariner, when drawing nigh the coasts of foreign lands, if by night he hear the roar of breakers, starts to vigilance, and feels just enough of trepidation to sharpen all his faculties. But under precisely similar circumstances, let him be called from his hammock to view his ship sailing through a midnight sea of milky whiteness, as if from encircling headlands shoals of combed white bears were swimming round him. Then he feels a silent, superstitious dread. The shrouded phantom of the whitened waters is horrible to him as a real ghost. In vain, the lead assures him he is still off soundings. Heart and helm they both go down. He never rests till blue water is under him again. Yet where is the mariner who will tell thee Sir, it was not so much the fear of striking hidden rocks as the fear of that hideous whiteness that so stirred me. Second, to the native Indian of Peru, the continual sight of the snow-hounded Andes conveys naught of dread, except, perhaps, in the mere fancying of the eternal frosted desolateness reigning at such vast altitudes, and the natural conceit of what a fearfulness it would be to lose oneself in such inhuman solitudes. Much the same is it with the backwoodsman of the West, who with comparative indifference views an unbounded prairie sheeted with driven snow. No shadow of tree or twig to break the fixed trance of whiteness. Not so the sailor, beholding the scenery of the Antarctic seas, where at times, by some infernal trick of legerdemain in the powers of frost and air, he, shivering and half shipwrecked, instead of rainbows speaking hope and solace to his misery, views what seems a boundless churchyard grinning upon him with its lean ice monuments and splintered crosses. But thou sayest, methinks that white-lead chapter about whiteness is but a white flag hung out from a craven soul. Thou surrenderest to a hypo, Ishmael. Tell me, why this strong young colt, foaled in some peaceful valley of Vermont, far removed from all beasts of prey, why is it that, upon the sunniest day, if you but shake a fresh buffalo robe behind him, so that he cannot even see it, but only smells its wild animal muskiness, why will he start, snort, and with bursting eyes paw the ground in frenzies of affright? There is no remembrance in him of any gorings of wild creatures in his green northern home, so that the strange muskiness he smells cannot recall to him anything associated with the experience of former perils. For what knows he, this New England colt, of the black bisons of distant Oregon? No, but here thou beholdest, even in a dumb brute, the instinct of the knowledge of the demonism in the world. Though thousands of miles from Oregon, still when he smells that savage musk, the rending, goring bison herds are as present as to the deserted wild foal of the prairies, which this instant they may be trampling into dust. Thus then, the muffled rollings of a milky sea, the bleak rustlings of the festooned frosts of mountains, the desolate shiftings of the wind-drought snows of prairies, all these, to Ishmael, are as the shaking of that buffalo robe to the frightened colt, though neither knows where lie the nameless things of which the mystic sign gives forth such hints. Yet with me, as with the colt, somewhere those things must exist, though in many of its aspects this visible world seems formed in love. The invisible spheres were formed in fright, but not yet have we solved the incantation of this whiteness, and learned why it appeals with such power to the soul, and more strange, and far more portentous, why, as we have seen, it is at once the most meaning symbol of spiritual things, nay, the very veil of the Christian's deity, and yet should be as it is, the intensifying agent in things the most appalling to mankind. Is it that by its indefiniteness it shadows forth the heartless voids and immensities of the universe, and thus stabs us from behind with the thought of annihilation. When beholding the white depths of the Milky Way? Or is it that as in essence whiteness is not so much a color as the visible absence of color, and at the same time the concrete of all colors? Is it for these reasons that there is such a dumb blankness, full of meaning, in a wide landscape of snows, a colorless, all color of atheism from which we shrink? And when we consider that other theory of the natural philosophers, that all other earthly hues, every stately or lovely emblazoning, the sweet tinges of sunset skies and woods, yea, and the gilded velvets of butterflies, and the butterfly cheeks of young girls, all these are but subtle deceits, not actually inherent in substances, but only laid on from without, so that all deified nature absolutely paints like the harlot, whose allurements cover nothing but the charnel house within. And when we proceed further, and consider that the mystical cosmetic which produces every one of her hues, the great principle of light, forever remains white or colorless in itself, and if operating without medium upon matter, would touch all objects, even tulips and roses, with its own blank tinge. Pondering all this, the palsied universe lies before us a leper, and like willful travelers in Lapland, who refuse to wear colored and coloring glasses upon their eyes, so the wretched infidel gazes himself blind at the monumental white shroud that wraps all the prospect around him. And of all these things, the albino whale was the symbol. Wonder ye then at the fiery hunt